You know what people say about living alone as you get older, that it is peaceful, that it is empowering, that you finally get to do things your way, on your schedule, without having to negotiate or explain or accommodate. And all of that is true. My name is Margaret, and I'm 72 years old, and I've been living alone for 9 years. I want to say that clearly at the start of this conversation. Living alone has given me a quality of daily life that I genuinely love and would not trade. But there is another side of the story, the side that people who have not lived it do not talk about much. The adjustments nobody warns you about, the things you only understand once you are actually inside them. Not bad things necessarily, just real ones. I have been thinking about these for a while, and today I want to share them honestly, the way I would with a close friend over a cup of tea. Because I think the most useful conversations about this chapter of life are the honest ones, not the ones that only show the peaceful mornings and the organized shelves and the freedom. These are the things they do not tell you about living alone as an older woman. The first thing, you become your own safety system, and that requires actual planning. When you live with someone, there's a passive kind of safety in their presence. Someone who would notice, someone who would hear, someone who would, if needed, act. When you live alone, that passive system disappears, and nothing replaces it automatically. This was not something I had thought about seriously until about a year after Robert passed, when I had a brief health scare late on a Tuesday evening. Nothing serious, as it turned out, but I remember lying on the sofa and realizing that no one would know unless I told them. That the neighbors were not close enough to hear anything, that Daniel was 2 states away and we had not spoken in 4 days. It clarified something for me immediately. Living alone well at this age requires a deliberate safety structure, not an anxious one, a practical one. I have a neighbor who has my spare key. I have a check-in arrangement with Daniel. If he has not heard from me in 2 days, he calls. I keep my phone within arm's reach during the evening hours, which I did not used to do. None of these things are burdens. They are simply the structures that allow me to live alone with genuine confidence, rather than with an underlying unease I would rather not carry. If you are living alone and have not thought about what your safety structure looks like, I want to encourage you to think about it this week. Not because something is likely to go wrong, because having a structure means you stop thinking about it and can simply live. Tell me in the comments, what does your safety arrangement look like when you live alone? Do you have a check-in system with someone? Or is this something you have not quite gotten around to setting up? I ask because I know from conversations with other women that this is one of the things most of us know we should address and find it easy to keep deferring. The second thing, loneliness and solitude are not the same thing, but the line between them moves. I am a naturally quiet person. I was always the librarian who meant it when she said she needed an afternoon alone with a book. I thought when I first started living alone that I would be fine, better than fine. Finally, a house that was exactly as quiet as I wanted it. And I was right, much of the time. The solitude of living alone is a genuine gift that I want to honor honestly. The mornings that are entirely mine, the evenings organized around nothing but what I want to do, the freedom to think in an uninterrupted way that I had not experienced since before I was married. But what I had not anticipated was that the line between solitude and loneliness shifts with the seasons and the circumstances. There are weeks when the quiet is exactly what I want. And there are weeks, usually in winter, usually when I have not left the house for a day or two, when I notice the quiet differently, when it becomes not chosen solitude, but simply the absence of anyone. The women I have talked to about this describe the same thing. Not constant loneliness, nothing like that, but the particular emptiness of having something interesting happen in the kitchen and having no one to call out to. The fate strangeness of eating dinner without the shape of another person at the table. The awareness at the end of a full and meaningful day that you have not spoken a single word out loud. What I have found helps is not filling the silence with noise, though I understand why people do that. It is being intentional about the human contact I do have. A proper conversation, not just a text. An invitation extended rather than waited for. These things do not eliminate the quiet. They give the quiet its right context, not absence, but space between genuine connections. Before I continue, a quick word. If you enjoy this channel and want to support my work, just look directly below the video player, right next to the subscribe button, and click the button that says join. That is how you become a Smart Organizer. Smart Organizers members get exclusive videos, a loyalty badge in the comments, and custom channel emojis. I would love to have you there. The third thing, keeping the home alone requires a different system than keeping a home with others. When you live with other people, the maintenance of a home is distributed in ways you often do not consciously notice. Someone else deals with the bin. Someone else notices when something needs replacing. Someone else's presence means certain tasks get done as a natural part of daily life, rather than requiring a specific decision and a specific effort. When you live alone, every task is yours, all of them, always. And the cumulative weight of that is something nobody prepares you for, especially in the years after a long marriage or a long time of sharing. I spent the first couple of years after Robert passed managing the house approximately the way we'd always managed it together, which meant that many things were not getting done, or were getting done badly and infrequently, because I was one person doing the work of a household that had been built around two. The weekends were for cleaning. The cleaning was never fully done. I ended the weekend tired and began the week behind. What changed everything for me was not effort, it was system. Understanding that a home lived in by one person needs to be maintained by one person's worth of daily habit, not by periodic large sessions of catching up. I cleaned a little every day, each task given a specific day and a specific slot, and the house stayed in a better state than it ever had during the weekend marathon years. Less total time spent cleaning, better results, no more dreading the weekend. If you are living alone and still cleaning the way you did when the house was full of other people, I want to gently suggest that the system itself may be the problem, not your effort or your motivation. Tell me in the comments, have you found a cleaning or home maintenance system that genuinely works for living alone? Or are you still figuring out what that looks like? I think this is one of the most practically underserved topics for women in this situation, and I would genuinely love to know how others are managing it. The fourth thing, your daily routine becomes the structure of your life. and that is not a small thing. When you live with other people, the rhythm of your day is shaped in part by other people's rhythms. Meal times, bedtimes, the comings and goings that structure the hours. When you live alone, all of that disappears, and what remains is whatever you build yourself. This freedom is one of the genuine pleasures of living alone. But it also means that if you do not build something, there is nothing. Days can pass in a kind of formlessness that is pleasant in small doses and quietly destabilizing in larger ones. Time loses its texture. The days start to look the same in a way that makes it hard to feel the shape of the week. The women I know who live alone most contentedly are almost all women who have built genuine daily routines. Not rigid schedules that leave no room for spontaneity. Loose, reliable structures that give each day a shape. A morning that begins the same way. A mid-morning that is productive. An afternoon that has its own character. An evening that closes the day deliberately. These routines are not restrictions. They are what makes the freedom of living alone feel like freedom rather than drift. I have my own, the same opening of the curtains and the kettle before anything else, the small garden check before breakfast, the mid-morning that I protect for whatever needs genuine attention, the evening that ends with the kitchen closed and the house settled. These things cost nothing, require no one else, and have made the quality of my days here more consistent than any other single change I have made. Please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week, I share what I've learned about living well and maintaining a home that genuinely supports this chapter of life. And these conversations are ones I value enormously. The fifth thing, the silence has two faces, and you have to learn to live with both of them. I want to spend a moment on this because I think it is one of the most honest things I can say about living alone. The silence is real. It is constant. And it is both one of the best things about this way of living and occasionally one of the hardest. On the good days, the silence feels like clean air. It is the background of a life that is genuinely yours. It allows a quality of thought and of attention to small things that I did not have when the house was full. The particular sound of the garden in the morning, the satisfying quiet of a clean kitchen at the end of the day, the way my own thoughts have space to develop fully rather than being interrupted before they reach their conclusions. On the harder days, the silence feels like its own kind of noise. It draws attention to the absence of another person in a way that is not quite grief, but is adjacent to it. It is most present in the evenings, I find, and most present in winter, when the days are short and the house is closed. What I have learned over 9 years is that the solution is not to fill the silence, but to relate to it differently on different days. On the good days, I let it be the gift it is. On the harder days, I put on the radio or call Daniel or invite a friend for tea. Not because I cannot bear the silence, but because I know when I need something warmer than silence. And I have learned to act on that knowledge rather than simply sitting in it. The sixth thing, decluttering becomes more personal when every object in the house is yours alone. This is something I had not anticipated and that I think about often now that I have done years of serious decluttering since Robert passed. When you live with other people, The objects in a home are distributed between you. When you live alone, every object in your home is yours. Every decision about what stays and what leaves is entirely yours. And this changes the emotional texture of decluttering in ways that are hard to predict. On one hand, there is no negotiation. The freedom to make decisions about your own space based purely on your own genuine preferences is something I have genuinely loved. On the other hand, when every object is yours, every object carries your life. The things accumulated across decades of living in this house carry specific weight when there is no one else's things alongside them to distribute the meaning. Letting something go feels more personal, more like a decision about who you are and who you are no longer, rather than simply a practical choice about space. What I have found most useful is Yuki's way of thinking about objects, which she absorbed from growing up in Japan. Not, what do I need to get rid of, but what genuinely belongs to the life I am living right now. That framing is kinder and more honest than the aggressive versions of decluttering, and it produces better decisions. The house I live in now is not emptier than it was. It is quieter, clearer, more genuinely mine in every corner than it was when it was full of everything from every chapter of my life at once. Tell me in the comments, do you find decluttering harder when you live alone or easier? I think the answer is genuinely different for different people, and I am curious about the range of experience. The seventh thing, social connections require more intention than they used to, and that intention is worth the effort. When you are working, the structure of professional life provides social connection automatically. When you are raising a family, the structure of family life provides it. When neither of those structures is present, which is the situation of most women living alone in this chapter of life, social connection requires deliberate effort in a way it never used to. This surprised me more than almost anything else about living alone. I am not a particularly social person. I did not expect to find the reduction in automatic social contact difficult. But what I had not understood is the difference between preferring quiet and having no choice about it. Solitude chosen is one thing. Solitude as the default, day after day, regardless of what you would prefer on any given day, is something quite different. What has worked for me is being the one who initiates, not waiting to be invited, not hoping that people will think to call. Calling first, suggesting the coffee, the walk, the visit. It took me longer than it should have to understand that this was not imposing on people, but simply taking responsibility for my own social life. That the women I care about are, many of them, in the same situation, hoping someone will call, glad when someone does. The other thing that has helped is finding context that provides connection without requiring me to generate the energy to initiate every single time. A weekly commitment with a regular rhythm, wherever it is. These things provide the social texture that used to come from work and family without relying entirely on individual effort. The eighth thing. Living alone is a life, not an absence of life. And the sooner you treat it that way, the better. I want to end with this because I think it is the most important thing I have to say. For the first year or two after I began living alone, I carried a quality of waiting. Waiting for the house to feel right. Waiting to feel fully comfortable. Waiting, I think, for some signal from outside myself that this was genuinely okay, that living alone at 63, then 65, then 67 was a real life and not just the interval between the life I had known and some future version of life that would feel more legitimate. The signal did not come from outside. What came instead was something quieter, the gradual accumulation of days that were genuinely good. Mornings I'd built to my own preferences, evenings that ended in a house that felt settled and mine. Small pleasures entirely uncompromised by anyone else's needs or preferences. The garden, the books, the particular silence of a clean kitchen on a Tuesday night. At some point, I stopped waiting and started simply living in the life I had. Not the life I had imagined at 25, or the life I had at 50, or the life I might have under different circumstances. This one, the specific, actual life of a woman of 72, living alone in her house on a quiet street, tending her home and her garden and her connections, finding the days mostly good. That is not a consolation prize. That is a life. I want to hear from you now. In the comments, tell me which of these 8 things you most recognize from your own experience of living alone. If you are not yet living alone but are thinking about it, tell me what you are most uncertain about. I read every comment and I find these conversations some of the most valuable ones on this channel. And please subscribe if you are not yet subscribed. Every week I share what I've learned about living well and keeping a home that genuinely supports you at every stage of this life. I will see you next week.